I think at first with Thrones it was somewhat of it's great escapism. I don't know. I think it's just brilliantly written and fantastically exciting and it's shocking.
And it reaches out in a way that lots of TV doesn't. Tell us the story about, I think you had an encounter with a traffic policeman recently which kind of proved the point.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Well, this was a little while ago when I just died on Thrones and not yet, spoiler, been brought back. And this policeman pulled me over at the side of the motorway for speeding. I was speeding, I'm afraid. And he said to me, "Do you know how fast you were going, sir?" And I said, "Yes, officer, I'm terribly sorry." He said, "Well, there's two ways we can deal with this. Either you can come follow me to the station now and I book you in and there'll be at least a fine, if not more, or you can tell me whether you're alive in the next season of Game of Thrones."
And did you?
I laughed, like you just laughed, and said, and he just was completely stony-faced. And he said, "I have to tell you what happens next, whether I take you into the station depends on what your answer is." And I said, "I'm alive." And he said,
"On your way."
"On your way, Lord Commander."
Fantastic. So, now, we are post-spoiler, so you have come back. But presumably now that you're going to stick with it for quite a while now, you are a big... They're not going to kill you off again, they can't do that.
I can't tell you, Andrew. I mean, you wouldn't put it past them, would you? Episode 5 of Game of Thrones, I suddenly actually die again. I just think Jon Snow gets really cocky this season because now he's immortal. He can do what he wants.
But you're in a very strange area now with Game of Thrones because it could kind of dominate your life for many years to come yet. Is that a kind of scary or unpleasant prospect?
I hope it doesn't, and I know it won't. Any good TV show must be like any good book, must be like any good narrative, and it must end.
It has to have a natural life.
It has to have a natural life, and it will end. It will end at some point.
Let's talk about Doctor Faustus. Kit Marlowe, after whom I think you were named, Christopher Marlowe, was, if anybody was in the Renaissance, the nearest to a Game of Thrones writer. He's the one who does the sex, the violence, the full-on gore on stage. So an obvious connection there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and he was very controversial in his time. You know, this play was, Faustus was a very much of its era, the horror movie of its era. I mean, everyone believed in real demons, real devils, and this was a shocking piece of theatre when it was first put on. Not least because he was sort of a known atheist, you know, which was illegal at the time. And this play was all about him questioning the realities of God
and so forth.
Yeah. So it was very, in the same way Thrones can be, it was very controversial.
It is about selling your soul for fame, in a sense.
In a way, the major difference, I think, though, is that right at the root of it, the set that we're on is actually just his own bedroom. He's what he really is at the heart of it is a man going through a psychotic episode, thinking he's a magician travelling the world and selling his soul to the devil, and actually he's stuck in his own room going mad, which is incredibly sad, but also can be quite funny, can be quite a dark comedy, can be blackly humorous.
But this is also famously a really full-on, quite shocking production. I mean, there's sort of nudity, there's Y-fronts, there's vomit, there's blood, there's the lot. And some of the critics have been a bit disconcerted by that, thought it was too much. What would you say to them?
I don't think we put this on particularly for critics. I think it was always going to be a divisive play. I haven't read the reviews, but I have noticed what the audience reaction has been, which has been vocal, they've been with us every night, and they've been really, really enjoying it. So I think it's
partly,
great.
Presumably, because of Game of Thrones and yourself, you've brought in a much younger audience than you will very often get to the West End. That in itself seems to be a good thing.
Yes, I think that was one of the main aims with this. By having me here, we're bringing in an audience who maybe don't necessarily go to the theatre a lot. There may be more TV watchers, maybe more Game of Thrones fans. Here we've had a younger generation of new theatre goers, and that's incredibly important, and that's why we're doing this play, and that's why I've been chosen to be in this play, and I feel incredibly proud of that.
Now, you've become a huge, huge star with Game of Thrones. What about future thoughts? Do you have plans, do you have hopes for big films post-big theatre?
I don't have a plan to try and, as it were, storm Hollywood. I'm producing and writing a TV drama. I'm quite interested in the idea of producing.
And this is about, if we can give it away, this is about Guy Fawkes and the gunpowder plot.
The gunpowder plot. One of my ancestors
Really?
was Robert Catesby, who was the
I
leader.
can see it. I
Yeah.
can see a bit of Kate. Yeah, there's a bit
There's a fascinating story for you here, that Robert Catesby, who was the leader of the gunpowder plot, when his head, that was on my mother's side, when his head was marched past the Houses of Parliament on a pike, Jon Harington, on my father's side, who was in the Houses of Parliament at the time, looked at him and said, and is quoted of saying, "He's an ugly fellow, isn't he?"
That is pure.
Isn't that brilliant?
Pure Game of Thrones, the head bobbing past and so on.
Yeah.
Are you kind of fascinated by political insurrection and overturning the power of the day? Is that what excites you about this?
I think the reason why this piece that I'm writing, I think, is incredibly important is it's maybe one of the first instances of ideological terrorism in Western Europe by a group of young men who were disenfranchised and pushed to the margins, pushed out of society and stamped on because they were Catholic. And I can't think of anything more relevant right now. That
So
we
it's the
celebrate every
Al-Qaeda
year.
of the 1600s,
Yes.
really, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely ready to be dramatised.